Okay, let's talk about it. And I think this, again, let me preface this because I know there's people that are upset about me saying this, but this are people who with knowledge of the program also. Like I can't, not everything is sunshine and rainbows in life. There's a business to this. And I think people are struggling to understand that aspect. And then like this, like, what am I supposed to say? You've been very consistent regurgitating whatever the national sports media has pushed. It's what's being reported. I don't know what to tell you. Like, people, you could be upset about what's happening, but obviously Coach Prime himself, he went on Good Morning America and said, I would coach in the NFL. He opened this can of worms himself. So if he gets upset about all the noise surrounding him in the NFL, then obviously it's like, okay, well, don't say that on Good Morning America. Also, earlier this week, Fox Sports' Joel Klatt, obviously former Colorado quarterback, was on Stokely and Evans with Mark Schlereth, the radio show in Denver, and had this to say: I'm very hopeful that he stays at Colorado. He has a very, very, very good offer in front of him from Colorado. I don't know why he hasn't signed it, but I will tell you, I don't think he works in the NFL. As good as he has been at Colorado, it's a really perfect marriage there where they have given him the keys fully. He can't completely be himself, or he can completely be himself. He cannot do that in the NFL. That being said, like, going back to that first part, very, very good contract offer. Doesn't know why it's signed. That's where it gets interesting. Right. Good point. Someone in the comment section. If he could coach his two sons, he would go to the NFL. I'm still saying you don't mention that you would coach in the NFL if you don't mean for this narrative to sort of get rolling. That was my point. So one of those things, this is where I think Colorado has to step it up somehow. Do they have the money to pay Coach Prime as one of the highest paid coaches in college football? They probably should, right? They've had quite a bit of income come in. For reference, Colorado's coach, Deion Sanders, currently ranks 38th in the country, according to USA Today, in coaching salary at $5.7 million. Coaches that rank above him that probably shouldn't: Mike Locksley from Maryland. Obviously, Sharon Moore at Michigan kind of helped Michigan win a title at $6 million. I would feel comfortable paying Coach Prime more than that. Sam Pittman from Arkansas, $5 million. He's on the hot seat. Matt Rule at Nebraska, $6.5 million. Kyle Whittingham at Utah is a program legend over there, $6.52. Brett Bielema, $6.6. Marcus Freeman probably going to get a huge raise, $6.6 at Notre Dame. Pat Narduzzi at Pitt, $6.69. PJ Fleck in Minnesota, $6.7. I feel like he's like borderline on the hot seat. Hugh Freeze, $6.7. Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, program legend kind of, $7 million. Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, came over from Oregon State, $7.2. Billy Napier, hot seat, $7.3. Lance Leipold, $7.5. Jed Fish, $7.7. So I think Colorado needs to figure out a way to get Coach Prime in that $7 to $7.1, maybe $2 million range, right? I think you have to give him the money that he probably wants and deserves, because, like, you can't just have a figure like Deion Sanders, who's boosted your local economy, who's really helped your program, your school in more ways than one, just because, you can't just have a guy who's as impactful as Deion Sanders is and not pay him what he deserves. So, and this is a report from the University of Colorado. Coach Sanders helped Boulder's economics significantly. In fact, from six home games during 2023, an estimated $113 million in economic impact was generated in Boulder. Okay, that's another thing. They've helped see the interest in the school grow, right? They're getting more people applying for the school. They're getting more people of color applying for the school. They're getting more interest. Social media following through the roof. I think Colorado is one of the most followed social media most followed social media programs in the country. So it's one of those things where you have to pay him for his value that he's brought. You have to pay him for the 9-win season for what he could do, and you have to pay him to keep him, right? And I think that's the hard part. Like, in most cases, I think you would give your coach a slight raise after a season like 9-4 in year 2, where they went 4-8 the year before, but they went 1-11 before he got here. I think you'd give your coach a slight raise, right? That's if your coach is like an average person, right? If your coach is, we'll pretend I'm the coach, right? If it's Kevin Borba and I worked my way up the coaching ranks and I'm a offensive coordinator mind, it's one of those things where I'm maybe going to generate interest in the next coaching cycle. You give me a pay raise, right? You give me another $1 million. You maybe give me access to a private jet or whatever. You give me a couple, like you give me $500,000 more in my coaching pool. But I'm not Deion Sanders, right? Deion Sanders is boosting the economic impact of the area around Colorado. He's boosting the economic impact of Colorado. And then he's also boosting the program in a way that it may never see again, right? If he leaves, Colorado's transfer portal interest is going to plummet. If he leaves, the interest in these blue chip recruits like Julian Lewis, it's not going to be there unless the program is built up by another coach. So it's one of those things where you have to pay him for not just what he did in 2024, but you're paying to keep him, and you're paying to not just keep him, but keep him happy, right? To keep him from sending out feelers to other NFL jobs, to keep him from going on one of the most popular morning talk shows in America or possibly the world. I don't know where Good Morning America ranks in talk shows, but I imagine it's popular, right? It's been on for my entire life. I know my parents watch it. You have to keep him from going on shows like that and basically opening the door for a departure, right? You cannot have the face of your program being like, you know what? I would leave to go coach in the NFL, to coach my sons, right? You have to figure out a way to be like, hey, Coach Prime, you got everything you want and need here in Boulder, right? Remember when you said you wanted your name on those mountains back there? Remember when you wanted a statue? Or remember when you wanted to build something special? Like, we want you to do that here, and we will give you the resources. I think at the end of the day, if Coach Prime truly isn't interested in the NFL, which, I mean, he said up until this past week he wasn't, this is probably forcing Colorado's hand to invest in him a little bit more, right? And I think that's the hard part about business, because now everyone, Colorado fans, Deion Sanders fans who are attacking me right now, like, everyone wants him in Boulder. And I'm sure part of him wants to be in Boulder. I'm sure part of him is probably open to coaching his kids again, because from a perspective of a father, even though I'm not a father, Deion Sanders, once his kids go to the NFL, there's no telling how much he'll see them as a father. If he's coaching and they're in the NFL, they're going to be traveling. They're going to be having their professional careers. They're going to be sort of figuring out their lives, right? He's not going to have them wandering into his office every day. He's not going to have them just chilling with him every single day and sort of talking about just life, right? That's not going to happen. And I think he knows that. And so it doesn't shock me that the father in him is like, hey, maybe I don't want that to end. But it also wouldn't shock me if he's like, hey, I need more money and I need more resources. Please invest in me, excuse me. Like, you can't just expect Deion Sanders to make gold out of mud every single year, right? Like, he no longer has Shedeur Sanders. He no longer has Travis Hunter. He obviously has Caden Salter, Julian Lewis coming in at quarterback. He's brought in a few corners. Preston Hodge is returning, which I think I need to talk about too. I'll probably talk about that on Monday. He's got him returning. You bring in a former 4-star DB in Makari Vickers from Oklahoma, who's a blue chipper. I think he was a top 65 recruit. That's going to help replace Travis Hunter. It's not going to replace him in terms of like all that he did, but he's bringing in guys. But Coach Brown needs to compete with the Texases, the Ohio States, the Notre Dames, the Alabamas, the Georgias. He wants to be at that level. And if he's unable to get players at that level, then quite frankly, he may outgrow this role, right? You can't expect him to continue to make gold out of mud and just be like, okay, we paid you a little more. Like, they need to fully invest in him and the program. And I think they'll get the return on investment, right? I think that's the whole point of why you take a chance on someone like Deion Sanders in the first place. I don't think you bring Deion Sanders from Jackson State if you don't plan on investing in him long term. So I'm interested to see if this motivates Colorado a little more. That being said, this is, I think, one of two things. We'll go three possibilities. Deion Sanders wants to stay at Colorado, and this is a recruiting tactic, a negotiating tactic. Deion Sanders genuinely wants to coach in the NFL, and maybe is sort of getting a little bit, maybe he's hopeful that the Raiders will take a shot at him. Or maybe Deion Sanders doesn't have interest in coaching anymore, and eventually we're just going to see him step away from coaching, right? I think people forget he got into coaching because his kids, and his kids are no longer under his guidance. Does he want to continue to coach? We'll have to wait and see. That being said, I think we have to sort of take all things into account. Colorado needs to do whatever it can to keep him, whatever they can to keep him. Coach Prime sort of probably needs to make a statement in the near future, be like, hey, I'm bought into Colorado. And I think everyone else just needs to wait and see, because that's just sort of the world it is. Excuse me. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated, of course. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Cam Newton's message to Coach Prime and his sons. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and check out the lines, right? You could bet on players scoring a touchdown. You could bet on your favorite to win the Super Bowl. Whatever it is, they got it for you. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, so that way you don't miss out on a second of the coverage, because regardless of how upset people will get, I will be talking about what's going on with Colorado. And I think that's just something that people have to understand. I'm here to talk about Colorado. I'm here to cover them the best I can. And I think people are getting upset. And it's not me saying that Deion Sanders wants to go to the NFL. I'm not the one that went on Good Morning America and floated out the possibility. So relax, right? Pump the brakes on that. Let's talk about what Cam Newton had to say. And I find this really interesting, just based on the timing. Cam Newton is an interesting personality, and let me preface this. Cam Newton is a divisive figure in sports right now, because I feel like he is willing to say what no one else will say. That being said, I don't feel like people always love what he has to say. I think Shador and Travis each sort of were like, don't talk to us, like you're kind of weird for what you were saying about us. That being said, let's talk about this. He was talking about Deion Sanders and coaching Shador, and at the NFL level, and he said this: as a realist, somebody has to put their foot down and speak facts. I believe in nepotism. I believe everything that you're doing, you got to put your people on. He's done that. But when you think about the statistic right here, Coach Prime has coached Shador in college, or Coach Prime has coached his son Shador in rec ball. Excuse me, a lot of sounds. He coached him in high school. He coached him in college. My biggest question for Shador Sanders is, can he be coached by other people outside of his father? Because when you look in the real world, when you think about this statistic, you've only had one coach since you were 8 years old, and now you're 22. Have you built this protection around him? Has he really been coached the right way to be able to say, hey, boy, sit down and shut up? This is Cam Newton's words, not mine. Quotes, Cam Newton. Oh, that's Shador. Hold on. Can you please sit down? He said, because the offensive coordinator or the quarterback coach is employed by his dad. That's the realist. And what do you say to the NFL locker room, to the veterans that have earned their right? Any questions I have from what we've seen from Anthony Richardson this year, from what we've seen from Bryce Young this year, can Deion bench his son? Can Deion cut his son, Shiloh, or even Shador, given that situation? It's the big leagues in the NFL, and I know the NFL locker room is going to look like, because you're talking men to men, not boys. You're talking to men that probably make more money than you. That's just something to think about. I think this is one of those things that Coach Prime really has to think, like, if he wants to coach in the NFL, to talk about Cam Newton's point here, I really think he has to think about how the locker room will perceive it, right? I think there's always this idea that player coaches are going to work out really well in the NFL because the players like them. But then as soon as they sort of start losing games and they start losing, I guess, the locker room, that player coach relationship takes a dive. And I can't imagine how having your son as a star quarterback or starting quarterback, I can't imagine that would make the situation any easier. And so I thought that the timing of Cam Newton's points were really interesting because obviously Coach Prime goes on Good Morning America, says he wants to coach the NFL to coach his kids. And then obviously now there's reports that he's reaching out for the Raiders jobs. Like, it's one of those things where I think Coach Prime really has to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And is that risk him and his son's coaching or careers in the NFL, right? Because imagine Coach Prime goes to the Raiders and drafts Shador, brings in Shiloh, and I don't know if I think if Shiloh's going to stick in the NFL, I'm not saying he can't make it as a safety in the NFL. I'm sure eventually he could. He'd probably have to be a special teams guy, right? He'd probably have to be a guy on special teams who's making plays, a guy on special teams who's running down the field on kickoff and punt and making big hits, and then maybe works his way into the rotation year 2 or 3, and then maybe contends for some more snaps the year 4. Like, is he going to be okay with not playing his son? Is he going to be okay if, say, Shador struggles in training camp and you have to play Aiden O'Connell over him? Is he going to be okay with that? Is he going to be okay with it's him or me, like situations where the GM or the owner is like, hey, we need a new quarterback? Is he going to want to leave the team because they want to replace his son? Obviously, I think Shador Sanders will be a really good quarterback in the NFL, but you never know what can happen, right? We've seen Bryce Young was viewed as, outside of being short, was kind of like a surefire, like, hey, Bryce Young's really good. He was a certified top pick. They benched him week 3, I think, of this year, right? They went back to him eventually because Andy Dalton got in a car accident, but Bryce Young was like thrown out to the wolves. They basically were ready to send him to Alcatraz. CJ Stroud this year, I think people are having doubts about him. Brock Purdy, it led the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance and an NFC Championship appearance the year before, and there's people that are ready to move on from him. So it's one of those things where, is Deion Sanders ready to make those tough decisions? Again, and right now, someone just said Deion Sanders has no idea what NFL locker rooms are like, right? LOL. Deion Sanders was a player. Deion Sanders was not a coach in an NFL locker room. Deion Sanders was not a coach in the NFL locker room of his sons. It's different. You can't just say Deion Sanders knows what it's like. Deion Sanders last played in the NFL, I think it was in 2004. That was 20 years ago. You think the NFL is the same? You think the NFL of this era, is the same as when he played? The players have the same mentality. Oh boy. So, like, this is going to be a difficult decision for all around. And I think it's a big risk. And if he pulls it off, more power to him. If he pulls it off, great. If he doesn't, then I think he risked his career, his son's careers, and I don't know if that was absolutely the right move for Deion per se. So before we go, I'll address some of the comments just because I feel like we're having a lot of fun in this comment section. This one for sure. You say it's different, like you have more experience in Deion. I have no experience in coaching in the NFL level, the college level, any level of that matter. That's not my job to coach. That being said, Deion Sanders has no coaching experience at the NFL level. That's not an incorrect statement. He has never coached at the NFL. He has never had to balance guys making more than him. He has said in the past he would not want to coach in the NFL because he wants to inspire young men. The guys in the pros don't want to be inspired. They want to win games, make money for their family, and do their own thing. This isn't like college football. Let's see another one. This one's interesting. Prime could shut down the rumors if he wanted to. It's as simple as that. It's true, right? A simple tweet saying, you know what? I did say I want to coach the NFL to coach my kids. But I just don't want to, like, I don't know what the answer would be, but I'd figure it out, right? I'd figure out a statement. It's been awfully quiet from the Sanders camp over there. And I think a lot of the best way to shut this down is to sort of come out and say something yourself. So let's see. Where's the AD? Yeah, Rick George. I don't know. The ball's in Rick George's court, though. I can tell you that. Rick George needs to come out and he needs to deliver a contract or a definitive answer on like, hey, we are doing whatever we can to keep Coach Prime here. So let's see what else before we go. Yeah, I think that's it. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen of the day. I know it's a divisive topic. I promise you, this isn't me saying I want Coach Prime to leave Colorado. This isn't me saying I want this to happen. I'm just talking about what's happening out in the real world. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you guys don't miss out on a second of the coverage. We're going to continue to cover this saga as it develops. I think probably the most likely avenue for this is Coach Prime is working his way into a new contract with Colorado. He's going to give himself some big money. I also think we have to be prepared for the possibility that he could be interested in leaving. That's just how life goes. That being said, I'll keep you guys covered on Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hope all of you have a great Saturday, and I will see you guys on Monday. Unless anything crazy happens. This has been Locked On Buffs.